A man not long ago showed me the notes he took 23 years earlier. And he said, Mr. Rohn, I've used these notes all these years in my business life, my personal life, my family. He said, I've made my fortune. And he said, I want to thank you for these notes. And he had me sign them after 23 years. It was just incredible. And he said, when I took these notes, I was 18 years old. So he was just a teenager sitting in the audience taking all these notes, but the notes he kept for 23 years. And it was such great pleasure and excitement for me to sign those notes. It's great when your name appears in someone's testimonial. First note for today, I would like for my name to appear in someone's testimonial. And it's so easy to do that. You don't have to give lectures and seminars. If you just recommend a book, that changed your financial future, recommend a book that helped you set goals, recommend a book that turned your life around, recommend a book that created better health, and you just pass that along to someone at a Tuesday breakfast, right? And someone later says, that book you recommended, I'm telling you, that started me reading, and then I read another one, and here's what's happened to me. Here's what's happened to me financially, socially, personally, and it all goes back 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when we had that Tuesday morning breakfast and you recommended that book. So it's pretty easy for your name to appear in someone's testimonial. And I get great delight in traveling around the world and having that happen for me. Now someone says, Mr. Rohn, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, I sat in your seminar, you shared some ideas, here's what's happened to me, my family, my income. So make this the second note of your notes for today. You never know who may be in your audience. You just don't know. Say, well, just a teenager, but we can't say just a teenager. We have to say each individual is important. So if you have a chance to share, here's what's important. Always do your best. Always be sincere. And always tell as much of your story as you can to help someone else. Because you never know who you're talking to. Right? The next person that may be a friend for life, the next person that may be a business associate for a long, long time. So just have great respect for everybody, and then sincerely tell your story, or recommend a book, or share an idea. Because sure enough, a week from then, a year from then, years later, your name will appear in their testimonial. This is why teaching is so incredible. And this is why the greatest art in the world, the art of parenting, is so important, so that your influence can live on. Not just in your children, but the people that your children influence. And not just their children, not just your children and your grandchildren, but the people they influence. Right? The people your sons and your daughters influence, the people your grandchildren influence. So that the ideas that you stuck with and that you taught and that you carefully made sure they were nurtured in the minds and hearts and souls of your children, they go on and on and on. Okay. How long-ranging is the impact of an idea? And the answer is infinitely. It can go as far as you can imagine ideas influence. Okay. So that's why I love to do seminars. And have someone say, a year ago, Mr. Rohn, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And I'm doing my best to improve and get better. I don't want the day to come when someone says, you should have heard Jim Rohn 10 years ago when he was really terrific. I don't want that to happen. I want someone to say, hey, I heard him 10 years ago, but you should hear him now, right? Taking off some of the sharp edges. He's, gotten a little better. Reaching in the heart and soul. Here's really what I want to do. Take what's in my notebook and my notes and get it in your notebook. Take what's in my head, get it in your head. What's in my heart, hopefully get it in your heart. Then here's what I want you to promise me, that you'll pass it on to somebody else. Because that's what's interesting. I haven't come just to do a seminar and get paid, because I don't need the money. Okay, I take the money, but I don't need the money. Because I made my fortune a long time ago. But here's what I do need. I do need to know that my stuff lives on. That's why it's so exciting for when somebody shows me the notes they took 23 years ago. I say, wow, for this stuff to hang around and to serve somebody, when I'm off doing something else, the ideas are still working in someone's life. It's gone from somebody's notebook to someone else's notebook and someone else's notebook. So make this note. With ideas, you can affect the lives, directly and indirectly, of thousands, tens of thousands, and maybe for some of you, millions of people. Directly and indirectly. You can affect the lives of dozens of people, hundreds of people, some of you thousands of people, because the ideas you share won't be lost. They'll be invested in someone else who will pass them on, who will pass them on. Because, you know, some have come my way and gone on to do much bigger things that I've done. Tony Robbins sat in my seminar when he was 17. 17, he was on the outs with his parents and he was sleeping in his car. And someone got him to come to my seminar, age 17. So you never know who's in the audience. And he worked for me for 3.5 years promoting my seminars, back then called Adventures in Achievement. 3.5 years. Finally ran one of my offices at age 20 in Los Angeles. Tony Robbins. Now he's a big-time superstar, bigger superstar than I am around the world. Unbelievable. And he mastered all the stuff. But around the world, now he's a bigger superstar than I am, you know, multiplied by who knows how many times. About the same time I met Tony, I was doing a seminar in Los Angeles, and in my audience was a young man, 19 years old. His name was Mark Hughes. And Mark Hughes started an incredible company called Herbalife. But these were teenagers now. Mark Hughes, 19, Tony Robbins, 17, the man whose notes I signed, 18. So it's incredible. You just don't know who's there ready or when the timing is right. And I've just hoped that this weekend was the right time for you. So it's a chance to never be the same again after this weekend, only by choice. You know, by choice you can still go do the same old things. So jot this down. It takes more than one voice to help us to see, help us to think, help us to make decisions, help us to evaluate. It takes a variety of personalities, messages, points of view, the weight of experience. If it comes from several sources, it can be just incredibly valuable when you sum total it. And I'm just happy to be part of this sum total of good voices for the weekend. See, that's very exciting for me. Here's what it does, and you might make this note, because you can do it with your children, and, you know, we can do it physically through our children, grandchildren, and on down the line. A chance for immortality. Another chance for immortality. When your ideas live on, your influence lives on in someone else, and then the next generation and the next generation. It's also possible for the evil to pass generation after generation. The old prophet said what? Sometimes the sins of the father have been visited on the second and the third and the fourth generation. It takes the fourth generation to finally get rid of some things that were started back in the first generation. But also the positive influence can be visited on the second, third, fourth generation, no telling how far. You know, I've written so far, about 5 books. Here, I have a vision someday, 100 years from now, when I'm gone, somebody's up in an attic going through a box of old dusty books. And there's one of my books, Seasons of Life. They blow off the dust, say, wow, this is an interesting book. And it affects their life, and then maybe they use it as a textbook to teach other people 100 years from now, after I'm long gone. And do you know what this gives me? A chance for a little more immortality, to live on, right, in some unique manner long after I'm gone. Here's what I hope you'll find here. Number 1, sincerity. Above all else, sincerity. Because powerful things can happen when both the listener and the speaker are sincere. And I know you're sincere in being here, or you wouldn't have shelled out this kind of cash. So the pay gives some indication you're sincere. But here's more important than the pay, your time. It's one thing to ask you for your money, and it wasn't that much money, but here was the big request, to spend a couple of days. See, that's big time. Money's now small time because everybody's doing well, but here's what's big time, and that's time. So make the note, time is more valuable than money. You can get more money, but you can't get more time. When you spend a day, you've got one less day to spend. To ask me to come and spend 2 days at this time in my life, see, that's big time. Because how many weekends have I got left? Not an unlimited supply. And when you get, it finally dawned on me the other day that I was now working on the second half of my life. That's an interesting revelation. I'm working on the second half. So that you begin to realize just a weekend is very valuable because you don't have an unlimited supply. Sometimes we get faked out just by the language. Somebody says, well, I got 20 more years. Jot this down. You've got 20 more times. When you say years, it's a little bit of a fake out. If you go fishing once a year, you've only got 20 more times to go fishing. 20 more times to go fishing if you go once a year. So sometimes you get, 20 more years. No, 20 more times. 20 more times. To make each time what? Very valuable if there's a limited supply. A limited supply. So with my limited supply, these days are very valuable for me. I could be spending this time with my children, my grandchildren, and, doing something else rather than spending it with you. But this is part of my life. My family knows that this is such an important part of my life that they loaned me, actually, for a couple of days. But anyway, sincerity. Here's a good point to make, though. Jot this note down. This is important. Sincerity is not a test of truth. I hope you will find me sincere. But sincerity is not a test of truth. We must not make this mistake in saying, he must be right, he's so sincere. See, that would be a mistake. Here's why. It's possible to be sincerely wrong. Sincerity is not a test of truth. Make the note, the only test of truth is truth, not sincerity. Here's as close as we can get to the truth, as we see it. That's about as close as we can get. You say, well, this is absolutely true. No, it's what you think is absolutely true. It's your perception of what might be absolutely true. It's just difficult for any one person to get to the absolute truth. But we all have an idea. We all have a perception. So I'm going to try to be as truthful as I possibly can with you today in my perception of what I think is good, what I think is a good idea, what I think is a unique idea, what I think is a workable idea. I'm going to get as close to being totally sincere in believing that I've got something valuable and good. But now, here's the ultimate. Each must judge for themselves as to the absolute truth or the truth as it may apply to you and become workable in your experiences. Because that's what we're all after, something that'll become workable in our financial experiences, in our sales experiences, in our management experiences, in our parenting experiences, in our daily living experiences. We want things that become useful and practical, and that lead us from one step to the next step, that opens a door that may open a wide vista of opportunity we haven't discovered before. That's what we're all looking for. Sometimes we're looking for that fourth number, right? The lock has got 4 numbers, and you've already got 3 probably before you got here. And maybe, just maybe, this seminar will give you that 4th number. And the tumbler then falls in place and the lock comes open. But you got to have all 4 numbers. And as best as I can share with you some things in these 2 days, it'll give you an insight into something that's practical, something that'll give you another step to take, another way to look at it that might be refreshing in its apparent opportunity or potential opportunity. And if I can just do that, stir your curiosity to look at something like I see it, and I can only give you this seminar from my point of view. Someone the other day said, Mr. Rohn, your seminar is sort of from the man's point of view. And I said, I hope so. It's difficult for me to do it any other way. Now, you've got to listen to the man's point of view. Then you've got to listen to the woman's point of view. You've got to listen to the youth's point of view. You've got to listen to the senior citizen's point of view. I took my stepson. We went on our motorcycles once up in Clear Lake, up on the Jeep trails. It's one of my hobbies. One of my pastimes is to ride my motorcycle up on the Jeep trails. And I had Bruce with me. Bruce and I are riding along on the Jeep trails, and we stopped to take a little rest. take our helmets off, take our gloves off, relax a little bit, and the sun was just starting to go down. And it was one of the most magnificent sights up there on the Jeep trails above Clear Lake. It was so spectacular. And I said, Bruce, look at this. Isn't this fantastic? And he looked at his watch and he said, you know, it's getting late. We better go. And I thought, how come he's not dazzled like I am by this sunset? Then it occurred to me, he was only 12. And guess how many colors you've got on your palette to paint these pictures in the unique recesses of your mind? Just a few when you're 12. You haven't got all the different shades to paint these unique pictures in your consciousness, to see something, right? You're limited in colors at age 12. Because it's like reading a novel. If you read a novel as a teenager, it has certain meanings, certain value. When you get in your 20s and you read the same novel, guess what? You start seeing things you couldn't see as a teenager because it didn't apply. Then you read the same novel in your 30s, and I'm telling you, it starts to really change. You're beginning to say, now I understand what the author was really trying to show. I can see it now. In my teens, it was a story. In my 30s, it's an application to my life. And then in your 40s and your 50s, all of this starts to change from perspective, a lot of it depending on where you are. Right? Hearing the same idea from a different age perspective now starts to add a new dimension, a new color, some new insight that you didn't have when you were younger. But as time passes and your experience begins to grow, when someone says, see it, you know, a long time ago, you couldn't see it. Why? Not enough colors, not enough vocabulary, mental vocabulary, inner vocabulary to translate it for you. So you could only see it in a limited way. But as time passes, that's one of the advantages of age. That's one of the advantages of maturity. That's one of the advantages of living long enough to look at something at age 50 instead of age 5, to look at something at age 40 instead of age 10. The difference can be magnificent if you continue your self-education so that you learn to appreciate the wide range of what's happening in the world and around you in every subject possible. So, age 12, limited colors on the palette to paint pictures on your consciousness. But as time passes, we'll have a multi-dimensional possibility for you. One is because I'm expressing them to you at my current age. I probably couldn't have begun to express what I'm going to express for you these last 2 days 25, 30 years ago. Couldn't have done it. Didn't have the vocabulary. Didn't have the refinement. Didn't have the experience. Hadn't been to Russia teaching capitalism. All life form strives to the max of its potential except human beings. All life form strives to the max of its potential except human beings. How tall will a tree grow? As tall as it possibly can. You never heard of a tree growing half as high as it could. No, trees don't grow half. A tree drives its roots as deep as it can, reaches as high as it can, produces every leaf it can, every fruit it possibly can. To the max. Every life form strives to the max, except human beings. Now, why not human beings? Jot this down. You've been given the dignity of choice. You're not a robot. You don't have to repeat this year the same as last year. You can tear up last year's plan, develop a new plan. So, the dignity of being a human being. Now, here's the choice on being a human being. To be part of all we were meant to be, or to be all. To strive for all, or half, or part, or some. The choice is up to you.